Hey, how's it going? Going to look at motion blur this week as part of another 360 immersive media rendering hangout. We do these every Wednesday where we just look at awesome techniques for making amazing immersive content out of Unreal Engine. And yeah, this week we've been talking to a few users of the plugin about motion blur, and it's just made me learn some cool techniques for getting the best out of motion blur. So perfecting motion blur, or getting the best out of it for a render that you can in any given scene is kind of what we're going to look at now. We're going to jump into the Tokyo scene for this one. So it's got a lot going on. Be an interesting use case to look at. Let's try out some motion blur renders. So a few kind of ways you could test out motion blur. There's a few things that go on to cause motion blur. There's stuff moving around the camera. Then there's also the camera itself moving. Because if you think about it, well, in theory, motion vectors are different for that. The camera is the only thing that has motion vectors, right? I'm pretty sure that's right. This wasn't what I went in trying to cover, but that's an interesting point. Maybe we'll look at that in a little bit, but let's look into that later. But yeah, let's just get a scene going where the camera itself is moving from point A to point B fairly quickly. And then we can see how the motion blur is looking at standard. And then we can see how we can fix it. I'm going to do an equi-rectangular for this. And then we can just get a sequence for motion blur test. I'm going to make a folder. So we just go really fast. Could go really fast down here. Yeah, let's do that. Let's see. I guess kind of more going on if I go down here. Let's try that. I like that. Going from dark to light is kind of interesting too. Whoa, I didn't know you could go all the way down that. Nice. Let's do that. It's probably way too short, but let's get the point A to point B in. I don't want to do... No. Oh, I didn't do the point A. I accidentally keyframed the field of view for that point A. I kind of want no vertical transform as well, just for this test. Oh. Now I keyframed that. Okay. Can we undo? Yeah, okay. One more time. Nice. Keyframed automatically this time. So I kind of want no vertical change and no rotation. Horizontal point A to point B. Be like no diagonal either. Is that possible? Yeah, cool. The rotation is zeroed off. Awesome. So yeah, that's pretty fast. So see how it handles that. I'm gonna make a 360 render of around 4K. Let me just. So yeah, let's make a little render config. I'm gonna make it 3240 by 4860 and override the internal resolution because I'm going to compare this to a deferred render after and make that's okay this time. Let's not override for now actually. Yeah, and then for now nothing else. I'm gonna add some anti-aliasing later, but save this as motion blur test. What is it? A render config. In motion blur folder. Yeah. Now let's just do that. And 360, I've got a motion blur folder. Tokyo. TA for temporal anti-aliasing, standard anti-aliasing. Because we can look at the anti-aliasing that's just going to be the standard rendered anti-aliasing in these settings. Yeah. Oh, so we're actually in FXAA. Let's do TAA, see how it does. Anti-aliasing is going to be the main thing that's going to help or hinder the motion blur quality for all of this. So let's try that. Yeah. And yeah, I'm just gonna fly through some renders with some different anti-aliasing qualities and some different motion blur settings. So there are motion blur console variables as well, which could be interesting to look into. And also it's just putting the camera into different scenes and scenarios and seeing if anything comes up, you know, is always useful. Because there's just countless different potential scenarios. So yeah, let's find the render folder. And Tokyo. It's quite a funny resolution, isn't it, actually? But so this is TAA, isn't it? Standard temporal anti-aliasing. Ooh, got a crazy flash there. That's not right. That's interesting, but it's not what we're looking at right now. Looking at motion blur. Another flash. Like around here, wasn't there? Oh no, that was just that bit of geometry. Okay. But wait, I'm not actually seeing a lot of motion blur. What's that about? I haven't actually tried this TAA with this time. All kind of exploring this stuff on stream, so yeah. Maybe I'm not even going fast enough to have any noticeable motion blur. Let's double check this against. Let's just double check which plugin I'm in. Yeah, that's cool. Let's try the fast approximate instead. That doesn't require an update, restart, I don't think. I think I am seeing a bit of blur by the feet here, so by the bottom of the on the floor. So are we getting any of that here? It is kind of subtle. Yeah, it should have more than that, to be fair. Should be blurry. Wonder if that is TAA causing that. Let's see. Start to look at these frames. No, they're like not blurry either. Okay. Maybe I'm not going fast enough to achieve some blur, so I'll just try and make it just go super fast, see if that changes anything. But you would have thought that at that sort of speed is gonna be blurry. But already that frame. Already FX anti-aliasing is looking a lot nicer than TAA. I'm really wondering what that flash is about though. That's wild. So it's always good to get these renders in different scenarios. Just debug. An LOD thing. Pretty wild. Yeah. So let's try getting super fast. Because getting no motion blur is kind of odd. I am in a pretty random scene that I've been using for months, so it's not going to be the fairest test. I might have to just jump into a fresh scene, maybe move this level over to a fresh scene to be really fair in this test. But let's see, that would take a while, so I'll have to do this after the stream. But that's be causing any changes to motion blur. Oh, go set to 0 here. Okay. I didn't even know you could do that. 0.5? Is that gonna change? Gonna change something in the scene? In the actual render? I don't know. Try that again. Same one. That's looking more blurry now. Yeah. Oh, I had it off in the post-process volume. Totally forgot that's a setting. So it's interesting to know that you can totally turn it off using that. But yeah, there we go. We got some serious motion blur now. very useful to know that that's a value that you can tweak. Actually, so are we learning? Are we learning? Always learning and relearning these settings. Yeah, motion blur and post process volume. So FXAA. What is FXAA again? Fast approximate. Okay, fast approximate. So it's a high performance one. I guess you can also like just hover over it probably for a tooltip. No description. Yeah, fair enough. Fast approximate though, so it's fast. It's not the highest quality, but it's fast. There's a new one in 5.7 as well, like GXAA or something. Yeah. I thought people were shouting about temporal a bit more recently, but over fast approximate, but this is looking better quality by default. But anyway, I want to get on to overriding this anyway, so we got the motion blur now. And yeah, it's staying coherent apart from that odd LOD glitch. That's just totally something else, but nice and coherent. There's like no strange artifacts or anything. As you get closer and closer in, bit of weirdness, bit of choppiness. Kinda the usual anti-aliasing kind of ghostiness you might see, just kind of noise, some noise. You know, it's kind of like you're looking through a stained glass window, a frosted window or something. A bit noisy around this edge. So anti-aliasing is always about the edges of geometry. Motion blur is going to also blur textures as well, just like a floor texture where this is blurring, but edges of geometry is what anti-aliasing settings will kind of fix, improve and change. So I want to compare like stuff like this with an anti-aliasing override, and we're zooming in really far because this stuff is made to be viewed, you know, a tiny part of the image at once. You know, if you're in a dome or a headset, you're only going to be looking at like, you know, I don't know, a fifth of the image at once. Like this is like, you know, we're not getting the highest res, but we're not super low res either. We're at 4K. You know, we got noise, funkiness going on here. I guess with the motion blur now turned on, let's try. Let's try this GAA. Because I thought that's what would be standard already. So let's see. Yeah. See how that differs, how it handles motion blur. So glad I realised I had that off in the project. That's wild. That I was trying to look really closely as to whether it was on. It's like obviously when you see it, how it should be when it is motion blurred. Obviously that was off. But hey. Cool. Start looking at these frames back in TAA. temporal anti-aliasing, time-based. So we zoom in a fair bit. And yeah, we do have noise in the distance. I don't think that looks better than fast approximate in any way. A bit of a side by side. Get the same size. So fast approximate this side, isn't it? Yeah, maybe it is like. Wait. Need to be on the same frame, really, don't we? Pretty negligible. Pretty similar, actually. There's less sort of firefly glitchiness. Yeah, pretty much the same. Either way, neither of them are like that ideal. I think what I would try and do is try upscaling, try and render just higher resolution. And then downscale it to your final output res. But let's have a look at if we are to just compare this resolution. Can we go to some anti-aliasing override? Try and improve this. Yeah, you can add this here. Override the, regular temporal anti-aliasing and set a regular temporal count, temporal sample count. So this will turn off TAA or FXAA, and it will just say chuck this many samples. I don't know what anti-aliasing method it uses once you override. That's an interesting question. We'll use the default, use the project default. So it's still using TAA, but you're just taking more samples. So a temporal sample being it moving through time on the timeline, and then sampling these pixels together. So it's saying like the average of all of these. Spatial is the average of a little bit of a shuffle like this. Or, I'd call that a shuffle, but, moving through space in a little wiggle. And temporal samples are moving through the sequence in a little wiggle. So really good for motion blur, because it's saying, average out what this and this looks like. So 10 frames temporal sample will take, that to that, more or less. So yeah, we could do 10. Anything over 8 you have to override, because TAA by default does 8. It gives you this warning. Saying that it'd be lower quality than normal if you don't use that. So yeah, we could try 10. And this will take a bit longer. It's saying 10 frames for every frame. I guess it would take 10 times longer, right? Which is pretty wild. I feel like it runs through them a bit quicker though. I don't think it's going to times the render time by 10. Surely not that much. Just googling that exact question. Does yeah, oh, okay. By a factor close to 10. Yeah, so being careful with however many extra samples you're adding is pretty key. So it is going to increase the render time by a factor close to 10. Unreal recommends not going over 12, apparently. And also a lot of, very important to note that a lot of things that might look like an anti-aliasing issue are probably like shadow, map, resolution, or reflection, reflection quality, lumen, final gather quality. Yeah, because this is going to increase render time so much, it's really important to look at, just verify whether you can decrease any noise in the scene. Like maybe if you're seeing noise in this reflection that you don't want, that might just be a reflection quality thing, which would be way less time costly to fix via a setting in the outliner than just chucking more samples at it. It might not even fix it. It might not be the right thing. So yeah, samples being mostly about edge geometry. That's a really good anti-aliasing breakdown. That just gave a really good and exactly what anti-aliasing is doing, you know. And where to use it, where not to use it. This is actually called what's actually got a key heading called "What's it doing?" So demystify movie render queue, and there's a few things about anti-aliasing in this. Yeah, like any Sean Comley article, gonna be absolute gold. Raise the number if you don't see smooth motion blur. So it's a great comparison here. So this is like every sample that's taken. You can see each sample. So smoothing this out by adding more samples, more interpolation between the positions of the moving object. More temporal samples, more smooth the motion blur will be. Starting at a lower number and moving up is a great shout, because then you know you're not overdoing it. Faster moving shots will need more temporal samples, makes sense. Using either temporal or spatial is interesting. Interesting point about odd numbers. Keeping it to odd numbers so you get a sample on the keyframe for the animated for a moment of impact in a sequence. So the motion will come across more cleanly, or the beginning of an explosion will be clear. Yeah, TSR. I didn't have TSR in this project. Temporal Super Resolution. TSR is a big jump forward from TAA. For the most part, good to keep them enabled. So I should have had TSR in this project. Don't know where that's gone. Is it a plugin that I can re-enable? But yeah, it wasn't in the settings. Crazy. Once you get to 12, you get to diminishing returns. Good CVAR there. Control the number of jitter positions. That's cool. Defaults to 8. Lumen requires TSR. Recommends that we go and render with different anti-aliasing methods, so doing that for you, that's useful. But obviously, great to do it in your own scenes as well. Visual representation. What's this? Write all samples. When you see the jitter on each sample with TSR as you with the other TAA method sets to none. So you both want to create a stable image. You can enable that here. Okay, so I guess you get a visual for the kind of jiggle. That's useful, actually. For debugging, anyway, just to make sure it's doing what you're expecting it to do. You're kind of jiggling around to get different samples. So this was the 10 temporal. I want to look at areas like this. I think what you usually notice is, like, think it's looking a lot less noisy. So let's look at this frame 214. And we had this one. I can already see so much more tearing in this version. We're looking up at this. Yeah, look. Really nice improvement there. A lot more bearable to look at. Yes, that's the same frame. So much smoother. Took a lot longer. 10 times longer. So I guess I haven't done as Sean Comley advised there, in that I started at 10 samples, which is near the limit. So if I override, it warned me not to override, but go under 8 samples, right? Override, but go 7. Use at least 8. So it's going to look worse than temporal if I do 7. I'm just going to run this as a test anyway. Is it going to look worse, or is it just going to like take longer and risk looking worse in some scenarios? No. But yeah, so much happier with that, with 10 temporal. So much happier. Way nicer to look at. Trees and things are always tricky, but not getting any like of this weird abstract, you know, noise that you wouldn't really think you would see. I think this is like looking a lot more realistic to sort of, if you were looking at a tree from a car window or something, it would look something like that. Yeah, less randomness. Random ghostiness. And again, yeah, zooming in really far, because, you know, people are going to be looking at this huge, potentially. Yeah, just a lot smoother. Oh, did we not get the weird glitch thing as well? Oh, sorry, I just punched the mic. Oh, we did still get this. Which I'm intrigued by as an interesting find. And a flash on there as well. Yeah. Might be an LED thing, like things popping into view, in or out of view when they're not supposed to be visible. A level specific thing. I'm glad I found that. I think it's likely to be due to the level. Some kind of level setting that we could change there to fix that. I think that might be one for another video. Because I know like the matrix sample, you've got like kind of LOD system, and you know, in a lot of levels you have that kind of system where it's only rendering what it needs to render. But yeah, so much happier with that one. So yeah, a bit of a time cost to it, but well worth it. I would say still super quick for a 4K video. Anti-aliasing override, very awesome. I think I might save some of the console variable tests for a little later on, another video. Let's wait for this to get to the end of this one. That's got to be noticeably quicker at 7 samples, to be fair. I guess we've taken just over a quarter off of the render time. Almost a third of the render time taken off, so this stuff, you know, just by decreasing the samples by 3, that has had a pretty massive effect. That's well worth taking into account when you get into rendering very high res, lots and lots of frames, everything kind of matters, doesn't it? Or can have significant impact. Yeah, this article, Sean Comley with the absolute truth on rendering stuff, demystifying movie render queue. Sean Comley, guy's done some really good stuff. I'm sure you've seen some of his articles and things. I don't even know what that is. That sounds interesting. It's quite a recent one, perhaps. Steven's Flying Movie Render Queue, his first one. Oh, and he's done a FFmpeg with command line. Which is pretty cool. Using FFmpeg to command line render. Because once you set this stuff up, you don't even have to open Unreal, right? Or is he still... I can't tell if he's launching the render from FFmpeg or he's using FFmpeg. FFmpeg being the kind of relatively easy to decipher coding thing for editing videos. It's kind of like a script video editor. So if you want to batch resize loads of images or videos, or append something to a load of videos, actually makes a lot more sense if you got hundreds of videos to do this kind of thing via FFmpeg. I feel like it's almost just like a bit of fun as well. I don't know. Definitely got some serious utility, and I guess it's a great API as well. Because it's used for a lot of encoding stuff, yeah. But I haven't dived into this that much, but I've done some simple, like, resize this list of videos, but it's basically a language, so people are using it for all sorts. Filter. Okay, so seven samples. I feel like this is gonna look better than TAA. It took longer. So even though so even though it gave me that warning, I think this looks better than just TAA, you know? So that's kind of interesting to know that, you know, it's warning you and it's basically saying, oh, you're overriding, so you better go over eight samples to maintain visual anti-aliasing quality. I don't think so. I think this looks good and better than this. What frame are we on? Say, like this corner. This is a good comparison corner. 217. Into the comparison corner. Like, you know, even though it's a low sample count, this doesn't look as good as that. It's way more sort of over the top, jarring, confusing. Is it preferable that it's getting the highlights a bit lighter? Maybe? Is that preferable though? I don't think I like the look of that as much. It's a bit more brutal. You know, the blur isn't blurring. This bit. Yeah, that's nicer. You don't want that. I don't know why it's warning you against doing a low sample count with an anti-aliasing override, because yeah, I think that looks good. So that's good to know, like you could get away with okay, I don't like that. Maybe you could get away with, it's preference at this point, maybe you can get away with lower sample counts and overriding the anti-aliasing. But you know, this is where you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blur samples. There's not enough samples to blur them together to the point where you don't see each sample. And this is blurring it, but it's doing it in this like nasty, just harsh, noisy way. So I would love to check out the new anti-aliasing method with 5.7. What's it called? Subpixel morphological anti-aliasing. SMAA. Sounds like an acronym someone would use hatefully in a text message. Subpixel morphological. I want to try this. All renders next. Never even used MLA. Apparently it replaced MLA, but I've never even used that. I don't know if this is like meant for cinematics, movie render queue, but I'm gonna look at that. I'm gonna look at that next week. Vivid reflections, noisy shadows, unstable volumetric clouds. Sounds like all the normal standard anti-aliasing problems. Denoisers? Are denoisers the answer? Looks like it's always going to be a balance. It's not going to just be a magical anti-aliasing to fix all, but I guess it's new. It's worth trying. It's funny they come out with these new ones. I think some other really good tip I want to share soon is that for Path Tracer, there's another. A lot of you probably know this, but there's another denoiser that you can use that makes Path Tracer so much quicker. And I was struggling to even chuck enough samples at Path Tracer to get it to look smooth. But if you change the denoiser type from the standard one that it's on, then it looks so much better, and you can do it so much quicker. Cleans the image up way quicker. But yeah, that's cool to know. I think we've come across an interesting truth that Unreal seemed to advise against in its tooltip there, which was don't use less than eight temporal samples. I think this looks way better. And it probably took a little bit longer, but it didn't take that. It didn't fly through it quite as quickly, but it didn't take a crazy amount of time. This is the only thing I don't like, and it so depends on your scene and what you kind of value, but it's all so scene dependent. It's like every shot needs a different whole load of tests to decide what the best quality method is. It's like there's no kind of catch-all, and it's definitely about seeing what you can get away with. But clearly no point just throwing tons and tons of samples at a render. It's the key thing. Console commands is another rabbit hole. Motion blur amount, motion blur scale. Is upping the motion blur scale going to reduce those visible steps in the samples? Probably not, actually. Motion blur scatter. Levels of anti-aliasing sounds interesting. What, like motion vectors? Vector simulation, motion blur, sample. Yeah, there's not actually loads. I'm sure there's plenty more out there that I don't know about, but looking through the effects some of those might have could be useful. Maybe we'll look at that next week, but nice to see some of you hanging out, and yeah, we'll just continue to try and uncover rendering secrets over the next few weeks. I think I'll do a bit more motion blur stuff next week actually, because it's really interesting. But yeah, key finding really this week was that you can actually have quite low sample count, quite vastly improve the anti-aliasing from just a regular TAA. Again, TSR I need to try and enable in this project. Don't know why that wasn't there. Oh, I've been using mobile. Here it is. Okay, let's do a quick TSR and compare anti-aliasing. No console variables. Oh my days. See how quick it is. We'll see the image quality difference. Final little comparison. So we're on. This is the seven samples. Yeah, this was the 7 samples. You know what? Let's open them again to be sure. Seven samples override. TSR. Full screen look at TSR first. More flashy than the other one. Flashy is weird. But again, I think that's just a project setting. But quality wise, let's go to our little point on 214. Still a bit more gritty. Probably noticeably quicker, but it's just grittier. Whoops. Where you gone? Yeah, let's go to our 214. 214. This is 7. I think that was 7 samples. Yeah, I still prefer chucking some samples at it. I mean, it depends what you want, whether you want that or that. But yeah, let's look at motion blur quality, motion blur amount, and some other console variables to further dive into this next week. But yeah, it's been helpful, been fun to hang. Let us know if you want to cover anything else in future, and we'll do some more looking at interesting immersive rendering techniques in the weeks to come. Nice one. See you next time. Cheers.